We wanted to get an understanding of what non-majors knew about gas-fired power plants, so we interviewed a few students regarding their knowledge and ideas. Here's what they knew about the workings of the Abbott power plant.
Well, a power plant, obviously, that is connected to the electrical grid, but I don't really know much about the coal power plant, to be honest.
Yep, so I would assume it has something to do with combustion.
Understandably, these students did not have much experience. Here's a quick summary of how the power plant actually works.
The Abbott power plant is an important part of UIUC's efforts to reduce its carbon footprint. The plant uses a combination of natural gas and coal to generate electricity and steam in a Rankine cycle. So what is the Rankine cycle? It is broken down into the pump, boiler, turbine, and condenser. The first step is the feed water pump. The water is pumped into a high-pressure boiler, then the pumps transport the water by converting rotational energy from impeller into the fluid flow hydrodynamic energy. Work is required to move this water, but no cooling or heating is done, making this process adiabatic, which means no heat is transferred. High-pressure water then passes through a boiler where it is heated by burning coal, natural gases, and nuclear power. This requires no work done but an increase in heat energy. The water has now boiled into steam, where it is moving very quickly as it passes over the next step of the cycle, the turbine. The turbine spins rapidly as the steam passes over the blades. That spinning mechanical motion is then transferred into electrical power using a generator attached to the turbine via a drive shaft. The last step is the condenser and cooling towers. The condenser passes a hot gas through a series of tubes where it is cooled by a fluid, typically water or air. As the hot vapor or gas loses heat, it condenses into a liquid, which is then returned to the feedwater pumps, and the cycle begins again.
Abbott produces a lot of CO2. We asked the interviewees how far they'd have to drive in a gas-powered car to match Abbott's yearly CO2 emissions.
Hundreds of thousands, I would think. Probably maybe like 1 million. I don't know, to be honest.
Million, because I didn't really know. I had no basis to guess, so I just picked a big number.
To gather more data, we sent out the question in a public poll. There were 3 distinct groups of answers for our question: 1 to 10,000 miles, 50 to 500,000 miles, and greater than or equal to 1 million miles. In reality, you would have to drive 28.4 million miles, or to the moon and back 60 times.
Our alternative solutions to reducing the pollution of the Abbott power plant will be mostly focused on reducing the pollution of the Abbott power plant, not replacing it. As for modifications, a Stirling engine waste heat recapture could potentially be very effective, as the exhaust of the turbine and the water reservoir would definitely provide a sufficient temperature gradient, and introducing a hydrogen mix to the fuel would reduce the overall CO2 emissions basically for free, without having to undergo a refit of the existing turbines. As for load reduction, large water heater style energy hubs would help manage energy peaks and could be loaded to operate as cooling in the summer and heating in the winter. And insulation improvements on existing buildings would reduce the energy draw of most buildings on campus.
The Abbott power plant always has room to improve in terms of its carbon footprint. One way this could be accomplished is through the use of biomass co-firing. Biomass co-firing is a process that entails burning a mixture of both traditional fossil fuels and biomass, as opposed to solely fossil fuel, to generate energy in thermal power plants. The biomass fuel can be in the form of wood, plant waste, or sewage. These sources are regarded as carbon neutral by the EPA so long as they are grown, harvested, and combusted in a carbon neutral fashion. As a result, co-firing is a great way to reduce carbon emissions under Abbott's current setup with minimal modifications.